for coming and attending this Careers in Green Chemistry webinar. I'm excited to introduce Dr. Selma Duhovic. Dr. Selma Duhovic had graduated from Ohio Wesleyan before starting her PhD at UCLA under supervision of Paula Diaconescu, where she worked with uranium complexes with ferrocene diamine ligands and different characterization methods for those complexes. Dr. Duhovic went to MIT as a postdoctoral fellow in the Tata Center. After that, she started up with Kibotics in Cambridge, a company that used AI to develop new materials in chemistry. And now Dr. Duhovic is working at Propellex, an investment company, as a senior associate located in Denver, Colorado. In addition to this, Dr. Duhovic hosts a podcast series titled Activation Energy, which explores the chemical industry and its role in combating some of the world's most pressing issues relating to both health and environmental issues. I'm looking forward to hearing what Dr. Duhovic has to say about her journey and some lessons learned along the way. So now the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So Paula asked me to share with you my professional journey, which admittedly is a bit unconventional for a chemist. If you told me a decade ago that I would be one, working at a startup, and two, working at an investment firm, I would have asked you, what is a startup and what is an investment firm? I had no idea what either one was. So I graduated from UCLA about 10 years ago, I think. And despite that, I'm still very much at the beginning of my career. Nevertheless, I've learned more than I imagined that I would in the last 10 years. And I wanted to delineate my path and through that share some insights with you that I've had during each point, right? And my career so far consists of 5 points. So college, grad school, postdoc, startup, investment firm. So let me start with college. Okay, so as Jamie mentioned, I attended a small liberal arts school in Ohio called Ohio Wesleyan. At that time, I wanted to be a thoracic surgeon of all things. So the plan was to do a pre-med major. But I took Gen Chem 101 with a professor named Kim Lanz, who would always drop these little blurbs about chemicals in the real world. Things like, titanium oxide is found both in paint as well as Oreo cookies, right? And so this combination of educational material that was also entertaining had an indirect impact in on my decision to declare a major. And so I moved away from wanting to be pre-med, and I declared chemistry as a major. Now, at that time, I had no idea what would come after that. I didn't even think about it. I was too busy studying, trying to get good grades, pass midterms, pass finals. But when the time came for me to graduate, I was not at all aware of what was possible. Like, what could I do with a chemistry degree other than work in the lab? I was lucky in that Professor Lanz saw my potential and he nudged me to apply to grad school. He said that I would not be happy working as a lab tech and that I wouldn't be able to advance my career. So he had me do a summer internship at University of Houston, where I worked on zeolites, and I got to experience the day-to-day of a research assistant. And back then, it was something that appealed to me. So the lessons that I had there was the major lesson there was, let me see if I can explain this properly. So the image that I had of myself when Dr. Lanz nudged me to go get a PhD did not align with the image that I had of a person who had a PhD. Okay, the image that I had, my idea of somebody who had a PhD was Einstein. right? And here I was, this bubbly, happy-go-lucky ball of sunshine college girl, right? The two did not align at all. And so this dissonance and in a way, the accompanying insecurity, because of those, I resisted and I almost didn't apply to grad school. But Dr. Lance was he was persistent, and he pretty much made me apply to 3 schools: UCLA, Tufts, and MIT. Okay. And MIT rejected me. And I'd like to think it was only because I wrote an essay that where I said that I wanted to work with Mario Molina, who was the Nobel laureate and who at that time had already left MIT, but he was still on the website. So I didn't know. And oops, right? Now, looking back, what I took away from that process of going from undergrad to grad school was that, like, images and labels can be a hindrance to your progress. We are multifaceted, and as Walt Whitman says, we are large and we contain multitudes. And the image that you have of yourself now and the labels that you append to yourself are only accurate today. Who you are and the preferences that you have at age 23, 25 will be different at age 35. So I would like you guys to be open and flexible. Oh, sorry, did not turn this. Apologies. Be open and be flexible to the opportunities that are presented to you. Okay, it's very, very important because you don't know where life will take you. So the next stage was UCLA, right? I applied, I got in, and I was supposed to work with Rick Kainer. I wrote in my application that I really liked what he was doing and I wanted to pursue that research. But when I went to visit the campus before accepting, I met Omar Yagi, who was just joining UCLA, and now he's at UC Berkeley, and he convinced me to join his group. So I did. But about a year and a half into it, I pretty much decided that I wanted to drop out. I decided that, the group was too big for me. I needed more attention and more guidance, and I was not at all ready to be independent and handle autonomy. So I said, this isn't for me. I'm going to drop out. And one day I was sitting in, because Yagi's lab was on the ground floor, and I was sitting eating my lunch in the front yard, and Omar Yagi had hired a crystallographer named Carolyn Nobler, who was the wife of Professor Emeritus Charles Nobler. And she came over, she sat down, we started chatting, and I confided in her that I was going to drop out. And she convinced me, she basically asked me to not be so black or white. She said, change groups, try it out for another, a summer at least, and see what you think. And somehow I ended up with Paula. And I don't know how, and I don't remember the exact conversation, but Paula turned out to be the best advisor I could ask for, in all honesty. Paula, as a mentor, she had this really interesting balance of strength and warmth, right? Like, she was really tough and demanding, and she never failed to call me out on things, but she always made sure that I understood that she was doing it because she wanted to get the best out of me. And at times it was uncomfortable, nobody likes to be criticized, but ultimately I think through that she empowered me, and she molded me into someone who recognized her self-worth and in turn gained confidence, right? Which is really, really important. The reason I want to mention that is because I used to think that it was all about the work, all about the PhD, all about the research, but it's not. It's the people that you work with who make a huge difference. So if your advisors are tough on you, please do know that it's because they see your potential and they want you to realize it to the fullest extent. While I was at UCLA, I found the PhD journey to be not only intellectually challenging, but also emotionally taxing. Back then we didn't have the term mental health, right? Or the term was there, but nobody really used it. And when you're doing original work, and that's what a PhD is, you're solving an original problem. When you're doing original work, you fail a lot, and it took me a long time to learn that lesson. That failure is an inherent characteristic of the invention process. When you think about college, for example, you run experiments in college that were designed to succeed, right? They've been done before, and the professors choose them to teach you chemistry lessons and chemistry concepts, not life lessons. But when you're in grad school, you're solving problems that nobody else has solved, so you fail a lot, and that's okay. And I think the sooner you realize that, the more enjoyable the PhD journey can be, right? You guys are going through a rigorous and demanding program that requires a great deal of hard work, dedication, and resilience, but ultimately it will prove to be an incredibly rewarding opportunity or a rewarding experience that will open up a whole world of opportunities for you. As the saying goes, through difficulty, sweetness, right? Remember that, keep that in mind. Now, I got my PhD. I have that. I can, say Selma Duhovic, PhD. But I haven't done chemistry in 6 or 7 years, I think. And in all honesty, there are a lot of chemical concepts that I've just forgotten. Like, I haven't used them, so I've forgotten them. But what has been ingrained in me during my time at UCLA are 2 things. One, the ability to learn and think critically and creatively, right? Like, I can identify any problem, I can gather, analyze, and interpret data, and I can develop a solution for that problem. And the second thing that stuck with me, and it will never go away, is the ability to bounce back and be resilient, okay? Like, in the process of solving a problem, I know that I will encounter some setbacks, and I don't get discouraged as easily, just because I've had that realization that failure is part of any original work. I want to mention and emphasize really one other lesson that I've learned actually much later, after I left UCLA. And it's something that I deliberately avoided during my time at UCLA. And it is networking and building relationships, okay? So every time Paula asked me to host a professor that was giving a seminar, I would make up excuses. I avoided it because I wanted to run experiments. I did not want to talk to some professor, right? And that was incredibly naive and short-sighted of me, because because the value of a relationship that you build with a professor who may potentially be your postdoc advisor or a collaborator if you end up going into academia, that relationship is much more valuable than a couple of experiments during the day, right? So I would really, really encourage you to establish and cultivate relationships with people, okay? Networking can help you learn from others who have not only more experience, but have different perspectives, and you can gain insights into new technologies, new practices, new processes. And then, of course, it can open up new opportunities for you, right? Collaborations, partnerships, even job offers at that point. You never know who might be able to help you in the future, or who you might be able to help in return. So the way I remember my PhD, towards the end of my PhD, was that in a way Paula was grooming me to be a professor, which is why she encouraged me to do a postdoc. And so I went and I did that at MIT. And what ended up happening, this 1-year stint of a postdoc ended up being 4 years. Okay. And that is because I found something unexpectedly. I found I found out the concept of commercialization or commercializing scientific inventions. Okay, MIT is incredibly entrepreneurially oriented. The community encourages grad students, postdocs, and professors to commercialize the scientific inventions. And it is not because there's a lot of potential to become filthy rich, but because commercialization of scientific inventions can help bring new products into the world that help society, that improve your health or improve our environment, right? So commercialization of scientific inventions is not just about profit, it's also about people and the planet. And I want to emphasize this because look around you, okay? Take this coming weekend, tomorrow and Sunday, and pay attention to things that are around you and that surround you, and you will see that everything that makes your lives better, from your kitchen fork to your laptop and your phone, everything has come from the fact that scientific inventions were eventually commercialized, okay? And this is particularly important in chemistry. Chemistry is a broad and diverse field. It touches every aspect of our lives, from plastic to batteries and drugs to semiconductors. Chemistry and materials are everywhere. And at a time when the world is facing a climate crisis, chemistry will be vital, right? Chemistry would play a role in everything from carbon capture and storage to batteries for electric vehicles. And so by developing new chemicals, new materials, and developing new processes, we as chemists can create a more sustainable future. So this is really, really important. And you guys are part of the Green Chemistry Initiative, and you're being trained to think in terms of green chemistry. So you are uniquely positioned to address this topic of how chemistry can positively impact both our health and our environment. So, focus on that. It's really, really important. And I think you guys are really privileged to have that. When I was in grad school, I don't think I ever even heard I don't think I even knew what green chemistry was back then. So during my postdoc, I learned that there's this whole world beyond research in the lab. Back then I used to think that you can just invent something and the invention will magically appear, to the masses. But that's not the case. Commercialization of scientific inventions is incredibly hard. And so I became fascinated with this question of, how do you bring a raw and unrefined technology from the lab bench to the masses? How do you go from a white powder that will cure cancer, or how do you go from a fluorescent blue powder to a thin film that goes into your OLED television, right? How do you turn a molecule with superior properties into a product, and then how do you turn that product into a business that will have a positive impact on society? So I became obsessed with that, and I studied it, but at the same time I took action, because I do think that there's a saying, action without study is fatal, just as study without action is futile. So I took action and I joined a Harvard spinout called Catalysis. Now, Catalysis was founded by a professor and 3 postdocs who recruited a commercialization CEO. And one of the postdocs, he's a chief technology officer. He was one of my lab mates at MIT. And what Catalysis is doing, and I think this is really important for you guys to know, Catalysis is using artificial intelligence to automate and accelerate everything from discovering a new molecule to figuring out how to synthesize it. So retrosynthesis, basically. Now, the reason I want to dig a little bit deeper into this is because And I don't know how exposed you guys are to the industry, to the real world, for the lack of a better word. The chemical industry is undergoing a massive shift towards digitalization, both in terms of hardware and software. So robots, high throughput experiments, as well as algorithms that can predict properties, for example, right? Now, AI, just from a technical perspective, AI can broadly do three things. One, it can describe something. So it can tell you, for example, the properties of a molecule. Two, it can predict, right? So it can tell you that if you mix A plus B, you will get C. And it can prescribe something. It can make a recommendation. So it can tell you that you should start the reaction at 130 degrees Celsius in order to maximize the yield of your product. Okay. So all in all, overall, AI can really help automate and accelerate the process of chemical discovery, which can obviously save time and money and allow you as a chemist to focus on more creative and strategic work. And at the same time, it can be used to design and optimize chemical reaction, and that can lead to the faster development of new products and processes that are, more efficient and more environmentally friendly. So what I learned by joining this startup, I learned that AI has a lot of potential to revolutionize the field of chemical research and development. And I want to very strongly encourage you all to start familiarizing yourselves with computer programming, right? Computational chemistry, machine learning, just computer programming in general, because the future is digital. The future of the chemical industry is digital, and I've seen it firsthand by being at Cabotics. The other thing that I learned by moving outside of academia and into the startup world, what I learned is the importance of communication, okay, which is something that I totally ignored during my PhD. Communication is huge. As scientists, it is our responsibility to effectively and productively communicate our ideas and our results to both other scientists as well as non-scientists, right? You can be the most brilliant chemist, you can invent something incredibly important, but if you don't know how to effectively and productively communicate your findings, people are not going to pay attention. And if people don't pay attention, your invention is not going to make an impact on society. Okay. So we come now to the last stage of my career, the current stage. And this is how it came about. So I spent 4 years at the Harvard spin-out at Cabotics, and there I wasn't really doing any chemistry experiments. I was doing more operations and business development. I was learning about what it takes to build a business, and I was learning about the chemical industry. And during that time, I realized that money makes the world go round. Okay. You can have the greatest invention, but if you don't have funding, that invention and your skills will be useless and will not have a positive impact on society. And so then I became interested in so before, as a technical person, I was inventing things, and now I became interested in investing in technologies rather than inventing new ones. And some time ago, I joined a group called Chemical Angel Network, which is a group of people from the chemical and pharmaceutical industries who like to invest their own personal money into startups that are innovating at the chemical frontier. So they like to invest in everything from advanced materials and batteries to medical devices and, small molecule therapeutics. And so by joining this group, they mentored me and they taught me how to think about investing at the chemical frontier. And the podcast that Jamie mentioned is affiliated with the Chemical Angel Network. And then a few months ago, just back in November, I left Cabotics And I joined a company called Propellex. It's an investment firm that helps startups get access to capital, right? And I see this as an opportunity to help finance the commercialization of scientific inventions, including those that fall under the umbrella of green chemistry, right? While I was at UCLA, I learned both how to dig deep into a single topic, as well as how to zoom out and think more broadly. And so the skills that I'm using, the skills that I gained at UCLA that I get to use in a completely different setting, it are very much relevant, whether I'm evaluating a startup that is developing a new electrolyte for batteries or a hedge fund, right? I get to use these analytical skills that I cultivated during my time at UCLA, and those skills will never go away. So I'll close by saying that, looking back, my journey really, and again, I'm at the very beginning, but my journey so far, and I think it will continue to be, so far has been influenced and really heavily influenced and shaped, not necessarily by my own determination or my strategic savvy, or I didn't really know what I was doing, right? I can't fully claim that, but it was influenced heavily by the people that appeared in my life, that saw my potential and that decided to hand me an opportunity. And they gave me an opportunity, and it was up to me to either seize it or not. There have been plenty of times when I just did not see something as an opportunity and then kick myself in the head later for missing it. There are three things that I believe are important for you to think about at this stage of your professional journey. So if you take away anything from this webinar, it's three things, okay? Number one, expose yourself to and expand your awareness of as many possibilities as you can. Again, what you prefer as a 25-year-old may not be what you prefer as a 35-year-old. So be open. So the second thing is be open to at least trying them out, right? It's you don't know where life is going to take you, but life will take you somewhere good, whether it be in chemistry or, in my case, finance, right? And then the most important thing is establish and cultivate relationships, because ultimately you're not going to get anywhere without people. So those three things: expose yourself to opportunities, be open to at least trying them out, and then cultivate relationships. So I'll stop here and see if you guys have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. I guess, are there students that have questions? You can either raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Serena, yeah.
Sorry. Thanks, Selma. I just wanted to ask on the topic of being open to the new paths. Like you said, Paula pushed you to do a postdoc because she was pushing you into academia. And UCLA is still very academia heavy. How do you expose yourself to these new...
Actually, Zarina, can I interject?
Yeah.
She doesn't remember.
course.
Sorry, I was trying to eat lunch. She was supposed to talk for like 45 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay.
So in reality, Selma left the group, and for a good 6 months, she just went home.
Yes, I did. I know.
And wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So, I kept checking with her, Selma, what's going on? What are your plans? And Selma is like, no, I'm just taking it easy. I'm like, at least go, volunteer at MIT. And actually, that's how it started. I didn't push her into academia.
Yeah, no, Paula is right. I remember I wanted to take about 6 months because I was so tired. I was, during my time at UCLA, because I switched groups, I was obsessed with this. I was really stuck on finishing my PhD with my classmates, right? So I ended up finishing my dissertation in 4 years instead of 6. And that required a lot of focus. And I think during those 4 years, I honestly made maybe 5 friends, if that, right? I never went out. I lived off of power bars. I would take the first bus at 5 a.m. from Culver City to the lab and leave, you know, at
And
11.
she would always have migraines if we had the social event.
Yeah, I was very asocial because I got it into my head that if I were to finish on time, I needed to focus. I needed to focus. And then by the time I was done, you know, I regret doing that because other people managed to get their PhDs while still being, you know, social and having this balanced life. And at that time, I didn't know how to do that. And so when I left, I wanted like 6 months off to veg out. Right.
But
And
I think I'm derailing the question because I just want to say, Zarina, that like I have not that many people who go into academia. Most of my students actually end up in industry, and I am not pushing anyone to actually do one thing or another. So
yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't. I mean, the way I remember it, it wasn't it's not that you were pushing me, you were encouraging me, or maybe you were grooming me. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing, right? Like you took me under your wing and you guided me because I'm a first generation immigrant. Zarina, you're
Yeah.
okay. Recognize the name, right? Like I came here as a refugee and my mom did not speak any English, so I had nobody to guide me. My mother did not know the American education system, right? And so I was very lucky to have people like Paula to guide me and nudge me. And I was very, very grateful for the opportunity to go to MIT, right? And it was because of Paula. So yeah. But back to your question, can you repeat it?
Yeah, of course. Well, the fact that Paula even brought up that most of her students go into industry is also part of my question, is that like in grad school, we only really hear about 2 paths, academia or industry. No one really talks about the other niches that a PhD can bring you into. So how would you recommend us expose ourselves to the other realms of where our PhD can take us?
Yes, yeah. So every university, especially the large ones that have a lot of resources, every university has a 2 offices. Well, just one office or division called at MIT. It's called the Technology Licensing Office. Okay, and they deal with patents. Right. And so that would be one place to start. I think Paula, if you can remind me, I think UCLA also has a technology transfer group and I think one of your students, Paula, was part of.
And it's actually very strong. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was again, because I was so head down and focused during my time at UCLA, I was not I wasn't seeking these things out. But if you want to seek them out, they are there, and it is a big community. The people who go from technology to business or technology to investment, they're rare, right? But they're very, very important because they can bridge the gap between the two disciplines, and those 2 disciplines have fundamentally different norms and principles and values, right? And language as well. Right. So what did she say? I'm going to use this opportunity. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So I would encourage you to reach out to the technology transfer office and see what they do and how they function. And then I think you can even be an intern for a semester or 2. Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, what I put in the chat is basically we have a seminar series where we bring people not just from industry, but from actually all non-academic types of careers. So we already ran one quarter last fall, and we're doing it again this spring. And everyone, I mean, you probably get the emails. Everyone is welcome to attend.
Yeah. And of course you can connect with me and we can chat more and I can expose you to other things outside of UCLA. Yeah.
Do other people have questions?
I actually have sort of a general question, if you don't mind. So we hear some people come that go straight from academia to industry, but having gone from academia to industry with some startups and then transitioning over to investing, do you have any sort of like general advice as far as navigating any sort of culture shocks or differences in the fields between how things are done in academia, then to industry, things like job searching interviews, things like that, or just any sort of general advice for someone who might be going between those different sectors of chemistry?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So in terms of job searches, I think your best bet is to network now. And you use the power of the network to find a job. For example, this Cabotics, when I joined Cabotics, I did not apply. It was a former lab mate, right? He recruited me. This job at Propellex, I did not apply. It was a mentor at the Chemical Angel Network who introduced me to the CEO, right? So I never really, none of the jobs that I've had came from just applying randomly on a website. So I would encourage you to start building your network. Your lab mate that sits next to you in 5 years will be in a position where he might be able to offer you a job, right? So think long term. He may not be able to help you now, but in 5 years he will. Talk to as many professors as possible, both in the chemistry department in UCLA, but also in other departments within UCLA as well as outside, because you could cross over into different disciplines. Yeah. In terms of your question about culture, yes, it's very, very different. So the one similarity between a PhD program or how you live your life as a PhD student and how you live your life as a startup employee is that both are fast-paced. Both are you have to be proactive, you have to have initiative, you have to be independent, and you just have to take charge and drive. That's a very important skill or attribute in the startup world. If you join a startup, it will likely be a science-based startup. I'm sure you're not going to go work for a food delivery app startup, right? And in that case, you will be surrounded by like-minded people, because every startup will have a bunch of technologists and a couple of business people, right? The biggest difference that I had, and it's a difference between just work environments. So in academia, when I was there, it always felt like it was me, myself, and chemicals, right? It was just, I was working independently and I was working in isolation. I collaborated with a few people, but it wasn't day to day, right? It was, a grad school in Professor Zink's group that needed to measure something for me, right? So I would just hand him my material, he would give me back the data. So I got used to that, right? The success of any project that I worked on was totally dependent on my initiative, my hard work, my drive, right? And then I get into a startup world where it's not up to me. There's other people involved, and I am not a sole expert. And so I needed to rely on others. And there's this saying that, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others, right? And so with Cabotics, it took me some time to get used to that, having to work with others on a day-to-day basis, right? And on top of that, I was working, so the technology group at Cabotics was made up of 2 types. It was chemists like me and data scientists and software wizards, basically, right? And I remember in the beginning, we hired a software engineer and he and I were talking about this one project, and we kept talking, he kept using the word experiments. And I kept talking about experiments. In my mind, an experiment is me going into the lab, mixing chemicals and, you know, generating some data. In his mind, an experiment was writing up some code and testing it for bugs, right? And so we kept clashing for like 45 minutes, and only to realize afterwards that, oh crap, the word experiment does not mean the same thing to us. So both of us had to sort of get used to empathizing with the other and learning the language of the other person. So that way, instead of clashing, we merge, right? So that was the biggest shock for me. And yeah, it was just going from working independently and driving things to having to depend on others. But ultimately, I believe that ultimately you accomplish more when you work with others. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do other people have questions? If not, I have a few I can ask. I guess you mentioned that there were opportunities you said no to. I guess, where did those fall? And if you were to do them again, would you, I guess, change anything? Or I guess at this point, do you think you said yes to the right decisions, or is there one that you kind of wish you could go back and change your decision?
Yeah. I mean, it was, I regret some things, but you know, I don't dwell on it. So it's things like, it's little things like, you know, when I was in the Yagi group, Professor Yagi told me to work with a postdoc named Rahul Banerjee. And I was like, no, I don't want to be mentored by anybody. I want to do this by myself. I don't want to work on this project. And I missed that opportunity. And the opportunity, if I took it, I would have had my name on a Nature paper, right? So I said no because I was naive and because I was maybe arrogant, or too fiercely independent. I said no to that sort of opportunity, right? It's little things like that. And you know, I've had, let's see what else. You know, the larger, I've had some, you know, job offers that I decided to turn down that I don't really regret, but it would have taken me in a different direction, right? And I've just gotten better at recognizing what an opportunity it looks like, you know, and then thinking, you know, extrapolating and thinking, you know, 5 years down the line, what seizing that opportunity would mean. Yeah.
George, you had a question?
Yeah, you said that you were a first generation immigrant. Does that mean that you were like an international student when you were as a grad student?
Oh yeah, no. So I like Zarina, I am from the former Yugoslavia, a state called Bosnia, and I came here when I was 12, so I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I came as a refugee. You know, international. I have a lot of international or friends who are not American nationals, and I met most of those during college and during grad school, and I did not have the same experience. So I can't really speak to that because I came when I was 12, and so I was pretty much you know, educated here in the States. Like at this point, I speak English way better than I speak Bosnian, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask if like, you know, like, because as an international student, I'm not sure if there's like some sort of restrictions, you know, in terms of what I want to do, you know, because of my status. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I don't think there is. I mean, the founders of Cabotics, the chief science officer who was a research scientist at Harvard, he's Russian. The chief technology officer, he was Ukrainian. The chief product officer was German. So no, I don't think there are, you know, I don't think that international students are restricted from some of these opportunities. Granted, you do have the, you know, like if you were to join a startup, they will have to sponsor your visa, and then may be a little bit tough because startups are inherently resource constrained. And so sometimes, I don't know, that could be a factor. I haven't seen it. When I was at Cabotics, we hired we hired people from India, Singapore, Canada. So I honestly don't think that should be a problem. That would be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Do other people have questions? All right.
Okay.
No, I want to
Oh,
ask a question.
okay.
I was waiting for
There we go.
everyone. Selma,
Yes.
what if you looking back, let's say career, not personal life, what is the hardest decision you had to make? And how did you make it? And kind of like, what was it like? Because I think, I mean, it's very hard to relate to someone's hardship, but it's easier to relate when you are in a hardship yourself. So hopefully this is just something that people can remember.
Honestly, Paula, I don't think I ever had to make any hard decisions. A lot, like as I mentioned, a lot of my life has been guided by people like you, right? And in a way, decisions were easier because they were, I was able to make them with somebody's support.
Okay, so thank you. By the way, this your seminar sounds like I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. and everyone should listen to me. Yes, I like that. But maybe I don't know, like even so something like even when you didn't want to do a postdoc, right? Like I mean, yeah, people, but you're still the one who made the decisions, right? So was there a time when maybe I guess the maybe Jamie already asked you this differently, but like you kind of want to do something else, but you couldn't? And
yeah. So I would say, I mean, to that question, I would say that because I wasn't aware of all the possibilities that I had in front of me, I didn't, like the choice was easy, right? So when I decided to do my postdoc at MIT, I didn't have an alternative. Well, the only alternative was to continue vegging out, right? So I wasn't, you know, planning on, I mean, I was taking my time to recover from 4 years of really hard work. But at that time, I didn't have anything lined up. I didn't think that I wanted to go into academia or industry, never even heard of the word startup back then. So the choice was easy, right? I think sometimes I think the decision becomes hard when you are aware of all the possibilities, but the decision being hard is a good thing, is a good problem to have, right? Like you want to have options. In a way, I didn't, and that was self-generated, right? Because I wasn't, my consciousness was not expansive enough to be aware of the fact that there is there's a startup world, there is nonprofit world, there's environmental work that I could do, right? So that's the best I can do.
Okay, but actually, Salma, I need to correct your memory. It is so funny that you remember things and this happened to you worse than I remember. Should I remind you that kind of like in your year 5, you wanted to quit grad school to go work for a startup?
Hey, what startup?
Somebody in engineering, some friend came to you and said like their professor wants to start a startup and you you know, you want to actually go work for that startup. I'm like, Selma, finish your PhD first. You see, she doesn't even remember that.
I have zero recollection of that.
Yeah.
I don't even remember having friends outside of Iris.
Oh gosh. If Google finds that email, I will
Oh my God, please find it. I would love to see that. Because the first memories that I have of a startup was when I got to MIT. Please find that email.
Well, you can ask AI to become better, or like search engines to become better. But yeah, I mean, I won't look for it now. It's going to take a while. But maybe if somebody else does have a question.
No. Okay.
Oh.
Oh, June.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks for your talk, story. And I'm a postdoc in Polaco, and I totally agree with the importance of communication with other people. And then let me ask you opposite question. So, when was the most delightful moment during your journey?
When was the most what?
When was the most delightful?
Delightful.
Delightful. Oh, gosh, every time an experiment worked, every time an experiment worked, I was very happy. Yeah, I mean, there was my PhD journey was emotionally taxing. It really was, because it was so hard to get used to that failure. But because there was so much failure, every time a little thing went right, it was more delightful than if it was just a normal day-to-day business, right? Yeah, I very much appreciated those good moments of getting data, or like, you know, running an NMR and getting what I expected instead of having to go back and repeat the experiment from scratch, right? I love that. And I loved putting together all of the data into a paper, right? The one part that I didn't like about putting all of that together is, by doing so, I would inevitably realize that I missed something, right? So then I would have to interrupt my paper writing and go back and do some experiment. But it felt really good after all that struggle, after months of failed experiments, to put together something and then be able to communicate it to not just the group, but to the broader scientific community, and to actually contribute to the scientific, you know, body of knowledge. That felt good. Yeah.
Zarina, do you have another question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, I don't know if you've had this experience too, but in the Bosnian culture, when you come to the United States as a refugee, when your parents like don't know the American culture, they don't know the American educational system, failure really isn't an option. Like, you have to succeed, because you don't want to make their move here, they like the fact that they left home, pointless.
Yeah.
Do you think that contributed to the fact that failure was so like it meant a little more than just a failed experiment in grad school?
Possibly. I think, I mean, my entire life has been, you know, driven. I mean, I remember being a little kid and my parents telling me that I was going to be a doctor, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you're either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And it was just, it was ingrained in my mind that I was going to be a doctor. And back then, as a child, I didn't know, I only knew of the medical doctor, right? And so that's, yeah. So, but yes, I agree. When you come from hardship, which is where my family came from, right? Like 4 years of my childhood were spent in a besieged town, dodging bombs and bullets, right? When you come from that, and when you see your parent not, you know, going from like not being well off, right? And you not being well off because, you know, your parent doesn't speak English, all of this, like it does make you have a sense of duty and a sense of responsibility to succeed. And my mom, although she didn't contribute to my education in a way that, you know, she didn't tell me, oh, go to this college or go to that college. What she did was just keep saying, she just kept saying, you must work hard, you must go get an education. Like, that's it. That's like the entire summation of my, you know, teenage years and my college years. Yes. And you do in a way end up not wanting to disappoint, right? And you end up being hard on yourself when you do fail. But, you know, the failures that I've had, you know, have been small, right? In the grand scheme of things, they have been small. But ultimately, like it's a marathon and it's a long-term thing. And so, you know, now I'm at a point where I don't even remember. I know that I failed a lot during you know, my PhD, but they were experiments, right? But back then they felt huge. It felt huge. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And for the record, Selma, Google found the email.
Oh,
It is in your inbox right now.
oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna look at it later. That is fascinating. I have zero recollection of this. Wow. Okay. I don't know. Maybe sometimes like as you go through life, you tell yourself stories in order to shape your history. But I honestly have zero recollection of that. I know that I spent about 6 months goofing off with coding. And Aaron Green, do you remember Aaron Green? He and I were thinking of doing something, but you know, it was.
No, this was not it.
Okay. I'm gonna look at
That-
No, thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to rewrite my history now.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. The email is not that long, so don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing them.
But no, thank you for sharing your journey. I think actually, I agree with you. I think we all rewrite our story a little bit. It's just, I want everyone to know that I think you've always had an open mind to a non-conventional career from actually quite the beginning. And all I had to do was temper when you start into that non-conventional career. Because I mean, yeah. It's actually, for those of you who are thinking about something like this, not that I read somewhere in a book that people who choose an academic job are like some of the less risk takers out there. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but from a certain point of view, yeah, there's a path. You know, people have walked that path before, and you know how that path goes. So yeah.
But I will say that you can be in academia and you can still, you know, be entrepreneurial, right?
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, the only point I made about that is like there are certain paths. I think I forgot actually who said, maybe Zarina, actually, that's when I interrupted her, right? Like people go to academia or they go to industry, but if there are like other types of jobs, it's a little bit harder. I think to all the students out there, right? Like, I mean, that's why we're doing this seminar series. We're putting it online, and it's search engines, as I just said like a minute ago, are getting better and better. So people can find, you know, seminars, webinars like this. People share their experiences. I mean, it is amazing. Within like 5 minutes, you can find anything you want pretty much. Yeah. And for those of you who are at UCLA, Selma will be joining us in person on, what was it, Selma, May, June, something? We just got the June 2nd. So you can see her in person and actually connect with her and ask her, you know, other questions that don't necessarily get recorded and put on YouTube. So
yeah, and do reach out. Like I'm on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to you know, help in any way that I can. And you know, if you just want to continue the discussion like one-on-one, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the same, I mean, I'm now in finance, but I'm still in that deep tech ecosystem, and deep tech, contains chemistry. So we should get to know each other for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting
thank you.
me. Thank you for all of you for taking the time to hear my story.
Yeah, and thank you, Selma, and looking forward to seeing you in June.
Me too. I'm excited. All right. Well, I hope
Okay.
everybody has a good day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.